Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Concussion Discussions series brought to you by Integrated Brain Centers. I am your host, Amy Zellmer from Faces of TBI. And today I am here talking with attorney Jeff Heller from Nuremberg, Paris, Heller and McCarthy LPA. And today we're talking all about your legal rights after a brain injury. So excited to have you here. Really important topic for everyone watching today.
Yeah, Amy, thank you so much for having me. This is always a pleasure to be with you and really get into the nuts and bolts of the situations that traumatic brain injury survivors are dealing with. So I see it every day. I'm a traumatic brain injury lawyer, and I'm happy to talk to you about this today.
Yeah. So, I know one of the things that comes up in my Facebook group all the time is, I had an accident or I work comp injury or whatever. And, the first thing I'm always like, is you need a lawyer, get a lawyer. And they're like, but I don't want a lawyer. Like, I don't want to cause trouble. And I'm like, no. You need to protect yourself here. So that's always kind of my number one advice for people is you really do need to get a lawyer or at least consult with a lawyer and they will tell you, they'll be straight with you. Maybe you could address that a little bit.
Yeah, no, you're giving great advice to your friends. I mean, the first thing that I tell people is you're not paying me to give you advice. It's free. And I would so much rather appreciate someone reaching out to me so we can have a discussion and evaluate what their options are rather than someone never even calling and never knowing what their options might be. The truth is, like you were saying, in a workers' compensation instance, which obviously is when you're hurt within the course and scope of your work, you're doing your job and you get hurt, is that your company purposely takes money out of your paycheck every month to have insurance in case you get hurt at work. They purposely want to protect you in case you get hurt on the job, so they can pay for your medical bills, pay for your lost wages. And the law across the country tells your company that they cannot, quote unquote, discriminate against you for filing a workers' compensation action. So it's really set up for you to pursue something if you feel it's necessary. I'm not saying you have to or people have to, but the premiums are paid for the insurance, and your company cannot discriminate against you if you file a case against them. So that's great advice that you're giving people.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I think with TBI too, it's even more complicated, right? Because you can't see a brain injury. Someone who, say, breaks an arm or a leg, we kind of know the course of treatment and how long that should take. It should take about 6 to 8 weeks for it to heal. You're probably going to wear a cast. Maybe you have to have surgery to set the bone. But a brain injury is so, like, you can't see it. No two brain injuries are the same. No two recoveries are the same. And I think that's what makes it so much more challenging in the legal world. And that's why it's important to find a lawyer who actually understands TBI.
Yeah, that's completely right. And luckily, technology is, I think, slowly catching up, especially recently with all these athletes that are getting hurt, concussed, and the science is telling them that it is not okay to get back to normal life a week later, 2 weeks later. Some of these quarterbacks that you see especially are out for a whole entire season because of concussion symptoms. And so when you do talk about a brain injury and not having what I call objective evidence, like you're saying, on an MRI, on a CT scan, you definitely need to have someone who understands that it's a lot deeper than that, that only, I think less than 4% of brain injuries are even identified on MRI and CT scan. CT and MRI they're there to find bleeding, and they're very useful. If you have a brain injury and you go to the emergency room, they're the hospital and the doctors want to rule out the most
Yep.
serious injuries you're facing, which is a brain bleed, of course. And that's what MRI and CT scan pick up. But they don't pick up the shearing, the axonal shearing. That's what they don't see. And so that is the challenge. But for experienced advocates, they know where to look and how to put the picture together. But at the same time, Amy, as you know, there are new technological advancements in imaging. The diffusion tension imaging is rapidly evolving and becoming one of those ways to identify a traumatic brain injury. And what that does is it measures water molecules that are going through the brain. So if you think about your brain as a highway, for instance, and you have traffic going from one end of the highway to the other, well, that's how the brain should be functioning. The way the diffusion tensor imaging picks up lack of signal is when the upper highway is moving normally, but the lower highway and the water molecules that are moving through the brain only go halfway. And so that's the signal to the technology that something is missing. And so there are new technologies coming out and evolving, and you definitely need someone who can explain that.
Yeah. And I know when I first got my lawyer, he basically told me right away, we won't ever, like, we're not going to try to rush this case. Like, we want to wait at least a year before we move forward, because with TBI, going back to the broken arm, okay, 8 months is probably healed. The TBI, we don't know. It could be months, weeks, years, right, before
Totally.
we see you feeling better. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about timelines with people, because I know people get really frustrated. Like, it's been 5 years and I still haven't heard anything about my case. And it's like, wow, that's sometimes how it works. It's frustrating. I get it.
It pains your lawyer just as much as it pains you.
Right.
It's a lot of people call the courthouses around the country, not the place to seek justice, but the place to seek injustice. But it's mostly because of that timeline. At the end of the case, I am confident that all my clients will be satisfied with the outcome, more than satisfied. But the cases take a while. And the thing to keep in mind is that when you pursue a lawsuit, if it comes to that, and we could talk about that, just the fact that you don't always have to file a lawsuit, but if you do file a lawsuit, you do not want to resolve it until you know the full gravity of what you're dealing with. And unfortunately, in a good majority of brain injury cases, the symptoms stay with you indefinitely. And the last thing your lawyer should be doing is rushing to a settlement for your case without knowing what the future holds, because the law allows you to get compensation for what you will reasonably expect to suffer into the future. And so if you continue with occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, let's say, or you're going to need it for the next 6 years, well, you're entitled to compensation, not only to pay for that treatment into the next 6 years, but that's pain and suffering that you're going to go through. Think about the stress, the anxiety that you suffer going through those appointments, not getting better, or getting better for a month and then regressing, and then having to treat for the next 6 months because you've fallen back, or you're just unfortunately not recovering well. Well, the law allows you to get compensated for all of that. And so you absolutely don't want to do anything until you know the full gravity. But I would tell you, most judges, most court systems, most state Supreme Courts require cases to be resolved within a certain amount of time. In Ohio, it's usually 1 year for what they call non-complex case, and then 2 years for a complex case. That's a guideline. So, your lawyer is probably going to be expected by your judge to have your case done I mean, if it's a brain injury case, it's obviously complex, but no longer than 2 years. So that's something to keep in mind.
Mhm. And what about, there's also statute of limitations for filing a lawsuit.
Yeah.
So do you want to touch on that just a little bit too for people that might not understand that?
Yeah, it's different. Every single state is different. So if you're thinking about pursuing a lawsuit, you should definitely talk to a lawyer in your state for advice. In Ohio, for your traditional brain injury case, not by that I mean non-medically related, not medical malpractice related. It's 2 years is the statute of limitations in Ohio. So that means from the date of your injury, it's not 2 years to have the whole thing completed. It's 2 years to file a lawsuit. So what I was saying before is sometimes your attorney can resolve your case within 2 years without having to file a lawsuit. And for some of my clients, that's what they prefer to do. And they really say, Jeff, I do not want to file a lawsuit. I don't even want to touch that. You need to settle my claim without a lawsuit. So that means I have 2 years to do that, but that doesn't mean your case can't go on for 3 years or 4 years. If at the end of 2 years you cannot get it settled, you're still treating, you're getting worse, God forbid, then all the statute of limitations means is you have to then file your lawsuit before that 2 years is up, and you're protected going into the future. For medical malpractice cases in Ohio, and unfortunately there's a large number of traumatic brain injury outcomes in medical malpractice situations, you have 1 year. You have 1 year to do that.
Wow.
And
That's a pretty short window.
It is a really short window. I mean,
because a lot of people don't even know they have a brain injury for months, years.
Or they're waiting, their doctor or their neurologist tells them it's about a 6-month recovery. So after 6 months, you should be back to quote unquote baseline. And then as you know, 6 months rolls around and a lot of times things are worse. And once those 6 months are up, if it's a 1 year timeline, you're already halfway into it. Or so really the best advice is as soon as an injury happens, whether it's a brain injury or orthopedic injury or anything, you really should reach out to a lawyer and just get some counsel, just get some advice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about work comp specifically for just a minute. There's a lot of misunderstanding with patients that are in the work comp system, and they don't understand that they can have their own lawyer. You get hurt at work, you get assigned like a case manager, and you have to deal with their work comp lawyers and their work comp, the insurance people and the IMEs and all that. And they don't always know that they can have their own lawyer representing them and helping them. And often it is needed. So can you just address that for a moment?
Yeah, well, absolutely. It's not just that, but even when a lawyer is involved, sometimes the company encourages the worker to hire a specific lawyer. That should be a major red flag.
Yeah.
But absolutely, in the workers' compensation context, it is adversarial. Even though your company takes premiums out of your paycheck to pay for workers' compensation insurance, and even though your company through workers' comp will pay for your lost wages, or they should, and pay for your treatment, which they should, it's adversarial. So although they will pay for your treatment, they want it to be as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Although they'll pay for your lost wages, they want you back to work.
They want you back to work.
And so a lawyer will protect your rights to make sure if you need more treatment, we can help get that for you. We can petition the Bureau of Workers' Compensation for additional treatment, which they call our allowances, so that the Bureau allows you to continue to get treatment. So same thing for lost wages. If you cannot return to work, a lawyer will help navigate between your doctors and your company to ensure that you have that additional time off. Now, one of the main things along those same lines is that there is additional compensation that you can get over and above lost wages and medical treatment, and those are in the form of disability awards. So you might go back to work, but you're still suffering the effects of your injury. Maybe you're able to perform your job, but you're still in pain and suffering. Well, what your company will not tell you is that you're entitled to an award at the end that covers this future pain and suffering. Just like we were talking about in a brain injury case context, the law protects you going into the future. Well, so does workers' compensation. And unfortunately, most of the time your company won't even tell you about that. And so, and additionally, they're not going to do anything to help you get that. You can only get that with a lawyer. And so that's really one of the main reasons why you need a lawyer, is to negotiate this disability award, which takes a lot of time. And sometimes you have to go to hearings in front of the Bureau of Workers' Compensation and fight for that. But only a lawyer is going to fight for that for you. So you absolutely, that's a great question, and something that everyone should be aware of, is that, in any point of injury, whether it's on the job or not, you really should ask a lawyer for advice. One last thing in the workers' compensation context is sometimes your company will fight the fact that you were injured on the job. They'll say, "Oh, you were on break in the lunch hall and you slipped and hit your head. You were not on the job when that happened." Well, what are you going to do if they say that? A lot of people might say, "Okay, fine,
right.
I'm just not going to pursue it." Well, no, you were on the job. You were taking a break, but you were at work. Taking lunch is part of your employment. That's one of the benefits you receive. You're still on the clock. You're entitled, and you absolutely 100% would need a lawyer to step in and prove under the law that you were actually in the course and scope of your employment when that injury happened. So,
and one thing you mentioned at the beginning of this work comp conversation that I want to go back to, because I think you went over it really quickly, was that they will encourage you to get a specific lawyer. And you said that should be a red flag. Explain why.
Absolutely. So these companies are not dumb, and unfortunately they're driven by a profit motive. All companies exist to make money.
Everyone's always looking out for number one, right?
the bottom line. Yeah. And, part of, when they have to pay out workers' compensation, sometimes they're companies that are self-insured, meaning literally as they pay out workers' compensation benefits, it literally comes from the company itself. It's not through insurance. The company's own wallet is directly affected. So they unfortunately will have lawyers or a lawyer that they refer all of their employees to, and almost in exchange for that lawyer getting future employees to come to them for workers' compensation cases, they will do their best to limit the amount of payout that the company has to make. And so a lot of times that might mean they're not going to fight for that disability award, that future pain and suffering. And that's a huge part of your workers' compensation benefits. And so, it's a lot easier these days to do your due diligence, to do Google searches, to look up lawyers, to talk to lawyers. I spent a lot of the day or a lot of the week talking to people and advising them and explaining really as objectively as possible what you should be looking for in a lawyer, and telling people what I do and my routine and my practice and my experience, but guiding them. And people at home should be doing that. You should absolutely be talking to different lawyers. And I always tell people, if you're unsure, you should talk to someone else. It's just like if you were going to buy a car, you would be looking online on, Auto Trader and Edmunds.com, and then you would go to the dealership and you would go to one and get a price, and then you go to another and get another price. And, you want the dealer to be confident and understand the car and know the ins and outs of it. It's the same thing with a lawyer. You really should talk to multiple people. And if someone says you have to use this person, you right away you should say, well, let me just get a second.
Look into that.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, this has been a great conversation. Again, a really important topic that we haven't covered enough in this series. So thank you for being here. And if people want to get in touch with you, we do have all your information below this video, but they can find you at mphm.com. And they can also find you on Facebook under Nuremberg, Paris, Heller, and McCarthy. And if anyone just has some questions, they can reach out to you guys for a consultation, right?
Absolutely. It's all 100% free. And if you call the number in my biography on the website or below this message, you'll talk to me directly. And like I said, it's free and it's all for advice. We just want our people to be educated. Obviously brain injury survivors to really know what they can do with a lawyer and through the court system. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any videos in this series. Like this video and head to Amazon to purchase Concussion Discussions.